This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, Jonathan and I learned we are not tough enough to be park rangers in the Congo as we review the 2014 documentary, the Oscar-nominated documentary Virunga. Welcome to the show. How's it going, Jonathan?
Going good. How are you doing, PT?
Good. Oh man, it broke my heart though to just have to say Oscar nominated, not be able to say Oscar winner. Like we imagine if it was the Oscar winner, we would have got way more. Like I don't want to be crass, but we would have got way more views and downloads on this episode had it been the Oscar winner.
Sure, especially when you're in the documentary category, you got to be the winner. It doesn't count so much. A lot of people still probably see Boyhood, but you
Right.
know, Virunga's gonna get a tough hit for not winning the Oscar.
Yeah, I was doing some writing on Sunday night, and my wife was gonna watch the Oscars, and she was like, "Oh, you sure you don't want to watch the Oscars?" And I was like, "No, I'm good." And then I was like, "Well, you know what? Actually, come get me when they do the documentary part." She was like, "What? You want to see the documentary part?" I was like, "Yes, I do."
That's right.
So there you go. All the love in the world to Citizen Four, but would have helped
Not
us
quite
out a
all,
little bit if it was Virunga.
right. Not quite all the love because they're not on Netflix, so
Yeah,
bastards.
indeed. I'm sure they will be. Like that's one good thing about the documentary category is like from last year, every single nominated film is on Netflix now. So I'm sure they will
Yeah,
all be on
little.
Netflix in the near future. So all right, before we get started, last week we made the fatal flaw of not saying whether we liked the movie till the end, and then finding out we had a vast difference of opinion, and really that show could have been much better. Um, But before we get to that, even actually, so I've got the question and answer thing open. If you are in Google Plus, I know you don't use it for anything, but just come over. No one uses it for anything except for recording podcasts. But come over to Google Plus and to our page if you want to ask a question. There's a question and answer session thingy there. You can ask your questions
Yeah,
live on the air.
absolutely.
Um, all right, Jonathan. So before we get going, let me ask you just real simple. Do you give this movie a thumbs up or a thumbs down? We'll get to your star rating later.
Okay,
Black and white.
definite thumbs up. It was yeah, I would say it's the most heartbreaking documentary I've ever seen. And a lot of them cover heartbreaking, topics, but that's kind of where I'd put it.
Nice. All right.
UPT,
I
what's
give
your take?
I give it the thumbs up as well. We can get deeper into it. I was kind of hoping you'd say, "Oh, this sucks so bad," but unfortunately, no, it was really good. All right, so give us the Jonathan patented setup for what this document is
Sure,
about.
you got it. So we're talking about Virunga, which is the Virunga National Park in the Congo, in Africa, for anybody who's keeping track of where things are on a globe. And
Always good.
it covers this national park. The Congo is a pretty war-torn nation. It's very unstable. It focuses on the people, the rangers in the park that try and keep among all the other animals, especially the mountain gorillas, which are an endangered species, only about 800 left on planet Earth, safe in this national park. And there's a lot of strife that goes into keeping it safe between foreign interests going after natural resources and and unstable governments, some pretty hardcore rebels that like to go around and shoot people and things and destroy villages. So and then it kind of focuses on just a couple of the individuals and all in this big picture and their strife and love for these animals in this country.
Nice.
This Virunga.
Good summary. Good summary.
Thank you.
So, getting right into it in the beginning. So last week you took what do they call it? They call it
Oh,
Myanmar.
yeah.
Myanmar. You took them to the woodshed. You took them to task because they did not give us a good, clear, concise history of the country. This movie opens with a good,
Right.
concise history of the country. How do you feel about that?
Well, I assumed it was because they saw the podcast, and then I realized, no, this is, done well before we ever talked about Myanmar. But I did really like it. I liked it, especially because you know what? my history of the Congo is a bit rusty, as I assume most, uh, people in America are, and it was really nice to have that little backstory of like, oh man, here's where we're coming from. Here's the stage of what we're about to talk about, and then they kind of left it alone after that, and they very, it fit in very well. I thought that was a great introduction, the whole part two, and then like even like the very very opening scene, kind of it set the tone. It's one of these park rangers had been killed in we assume in his duty as the park ranger, not quite like an American park ranger where you get killed in action, but anyhow, so it's his funeral. It sets a sad tone, but also an importance for what they do right off the get-go, and then they jump right into the history of a brief history of the Congo, but at least like give you a little background. So I thought that was a great opening, great first couple minutes to set the stage and get you not only a mental background of the history, but then also kind of put you in the mood for this, where things are going.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought it was stylishly done. It was well done, and it kind of set the whole idea that basically every time it seems like who knows, maybe there's a really skewed history, but it seemed like from what they're saying that basically every time this country kind of gets back on its feet a little bit, there's some kind of like discovery of natural resource, and then like a bunch of people come in and everything gets destabilized. Seems to be the trend of the history, and that really set the stage well. So you kind of said it already, but one of the first things I wanted to talk about is the Rangers. So I remember when I was in college, and I had two friends, and they were looking for a summer job in the summer, and they ended up going and becoming park rangers for the summer or whatever at one of our United States national parks, and they came back and were telling me about the job, and they were talking about how great it was, how it was mostly just goofing off and hiking, and there was maybe a little recreational use of certain substances. It was just basically a mellow time, and yeah, I'm glad they didn't make the mistake of signing up to be a ranger in Virunga, because those rangers, holy cow, they've got a little different thing going on.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, one of the stats they throw out there was 130 park rangers have died in action. It feels so weird to say the word in action with a park ranger as the preface to it. Like police officers die in action, military
Right.
personnel die in action, and so do park rangers apparently in the rough parts of the world.
Yeah.
And not that uncommonly.
Yeah, so our park ranger that we follow, like you said, we follow a few different people. Our park ranger we follow is a guy with a pretty interesting life story. He was a child soldier basically, and was forced to be a child soldier. And his story was pretty sad. They were like, "Hey, you're going to go to a super awesome school, kids," and then they went, and it was not an awesome school. It was a terrible school. The educational value of that school is questionable at best, because they were forced to be child soldiers, which is not an education. So then he stayed in the army for a while, and he eventually decided he wanted to make a difference and fled the army apparently, and became a park ranger.
Yeah, but I mean, it's even a little darker than that, because his younger brother was, I don't know, recruited or whatever you want to call it, kidnapped into the army as well, but he died along with a whole bunch of other people, and it was after that his mother was like, "Boy, you're just going to die in this stupid army," and then he fled the army. And one thing that drove me crazy was they never said if it was, so like, the army isn't very specific over there, because there's rebel armies running around all over the place and little branches of various rebel armies, and then there's the Congolese army, which is, I assume, the state-sponsored army. They never
Right.
said which one he was in. I was curious to think, is that how they recruit for the national army there? I don't know. Could have been.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, but
Yes. Yeah, then they show a little bit about what the park rangers do. Man, they're out there with their military grade weapons.
yeah, RPGs and machine guns and stuff. I was like, what are they going to do with that RPG? I mean, like,
They never use it, did they?
they do never use it, but I was like, I mean, are you really? I mean, maybe these guys are like they're definitely hardcore to a point, but I was like, are you really qualified to have that RPG on that hike with you? Is there not? I mean, if the situation arises, are you really ready to use that thing? Anyway, maybe they
Hey,
are.
better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. It's their motto.
Yeah, I suppose. Uh, yeah. Oops, I think you froze up on me there, Ty. And we're having a little technical difficulties. Anyone out there can hear me? We are having some technical difficulties. We're trying to work it out as quickly as possible. I see there's still a live link, so you might be able to see this. But we are reviewing Virunga, and I'm waiting for PT to hop back on the call.
All right, we're
Hey.
back. After a little technical delay there, sorry about that. If you're listening on the podcast, the audio podcast, you'll never know this happened. But if you're watching on YouTube, that was probably weird. Um, Google, man, you know what? You know what it is. I was bad about the Google Plus, and they crashed. So my apologies. And you know who sucks? Facebook. Screw Facebook. Google Plus is the best ever. I use it all the day, every day. All right, so we're back. Thank you for that. Uh, thank you for holding on. So we're
Yes,
talking about
the Rangers in the park.
yes, the Rangers, and so I mean, it seemed like at the start of the documentary, the main issue was poachers, right? Is that what they're mostly fighting at first?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where they start off, and they're trying to protect the park from poachers. Which one thing there were tons of questions I had that were never answered. Like one, I wanted to know how many rangers there were, and two, I want to know how big the park was. I did look that up, by the way, in case anyone's watched this. The park is 3,012 square miles, and
Big.
it sounded really big to me. It's about 3 times the size of Rhode Island. It is like Rocky Mountain National Park, which is a pretty huge national park in Colorado. It was 415 square miles. So, to give you an idea, pretty big park. So because I did notice like that kind of struck me as odd right away, where they're like, oh, here's like an illegal camp, but it wasn't like a tent. Someone had built a little straw hut house there.
All right.
I was like, oh, they had enough time to build a straw hut house before somebody noticed, which I get it now because it's, unless they have about 40,000 rangers, which I assume the number is probably closer to like 100 or something. That's a pretty big area to cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a I forget the classification, but it is some internationally protected group thing. I can't remember the name. I should have written that down in my notes. But it is protected by some international laws because of all the as a site of world importance, basically.
Right, which makes sense because it's like the only spot that they have these mountain gorillas, which again are almost all dead. That was the other thing that like kind of blew my mind about all this, and I know I'm maybe jumping around a little bit, but like kind of the second half of the documentary. So they start off, like you said, protecting the park against poachers, and they essentially move on to protecting it from a foreign national corporation. So like it's a company called SoCo, which basically goes in and mines oil, and they're coming in and they think there's oil in this park, and they're kind of coming after it. And again, once I found out the park was so big, my second question was like, wow, is that like 80% of the Congo? The answer is no, not at all. The Congo is 905,000 square miles, which is huge. It's like that's almost 4 times the size of Texas. So
Nice.
pretty huge country. So it's like, man, certainly there's oil elsewhere in the country. These guys are kind of dicks. It's like the one spot they got one little spot. I mean, leave this one place alone.
Right, right. And I thought it was interesting. I think the way that they kind of got into that was they're talking about the different reasons people poach, and they're saying that one of the things that's happening is poachers are coming trying to take out the gorillas because then they're like, if we take out the gorillas, they won't want to protect the park so badly, and we can come
Right.
make our nefarious plans come true.
Yeah, yeah. Again, that seems so weird to me. Like, why are all these people fighting over this, this big open wilderness? I mean, I get the oil people, but like the poachers and stuff, it's like, man, got this massive country, most of which is undeveloped. Just go somewhere else. Don't kill people just to kill gorillas.
Right. Well, maybe it's like I don't know how big the potential oil find was, but maybe they're expecting it to be like like a Saudi Arabia type thing where if they can tap this one spot where there's this huge amount of oil, they can change there's like a ridiculous amount of money there that will make them just all richer than their wildest dreams. Not saying
Sure.
that makes it good, but just saying.
Right. No, and I got it because I mean, like it is. So again, jumping around, but like, yeah, they kind of go on a quest to stop this oil company from coming in and destroying the land and all that stuff. But they set up like undercover stings and go around and which is really smart actually on their part. Instead of just like trying to set up a blockade and not letting the oil people onto the land, they go through and they find get all this recorded documentation of things the oil company is doing wrong, like bribing government officials and things like that, which could then actually stop it because you can take that it's an English-based company and go back to England and be like, look at this corporation, blah blah blah. Here's all our evidence. You can put a court order injunction on it or something like that. But anyway, as part of that, they meet up with supporters of this oil company, Congolese people that support the oil coming in, and their arguments were totally legitimate for supporting it. They were like, it's going to be a huge influx of money to the country. It could potentially be really good if they're getting all this oil out. We're all going to, they're obviously an impoverished nation. This could be huge for them at the expense of giving up one of their national parks. I can see, I mean, like, obviously this whole documentary that was my one little beef with it, is a little bit of a, it's a piece of propaganda, really. I mean, there's a lot of documentary filmmaking in there, but it's certainly propaganda to say this is this is a park that needs to be preserved, and we're against this oil company coming in and doing mining there. But I mean, you could really make a strong argument that it could be great for the for Congo if done correctly.
Right.
Which should, so.
No, I could see that. Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes. How about that? So we've talked about the ex-ranger. That our other characters are. There's a dude who takes care of the gorillas. He's big on the gorillas. That
He,
guy's
he,
that's
he
down.
is big on the gorillas. He loves gorillas. Literally, he's just like part of the family to him.
Yep. He's like, yeah, my job is mostly just to play with these gorillas. That sounds alright, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so, so there's that guy, and then there's the kind of the director of the park, who's like I think he's a Belgian dude, who's
yeah.
um, who's he's out to protect the park, and then there's a reporter lady who like I was like I kept being like, why didn't she leave? She should leave. Like the later half of the movie when it was like it's super dangerous, I was like, it's not worth it. Go, go.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she did have that piece of paper that said "press" on her vehicle, but
Right.
other than that, the bullets seem pretty real, and not, I
Yep.
don't know how much the rebels' gunfire really cared about that little.
Yeah. The rebels didn't seem like they'd be too averse to potentially taking her out if need be.
Yeah, or just for fun or whatever.
Right. So yeah. The undercover sting operation part though, I was not expecting that. The first time that came up, I was like, what?
Yeah,
That was pretty cool.
that was pretty cool, and that like I think that was again one of the reasons I really liked this documentary was because it hit. So it did have all this cast of characters, if you will, like Tyler's just talking about them, uh, but it jumped around from different parts. You would go from this guy who loved and cared for the gorillas and how he took care of them and playing with them in the park to the journalist trying to essentially crack the case of this corporate entity to the jump around to the rebel groups and their involvement in it, and the way it came together, it really I thought was a good representation of the actual events in the country itself, because it was in the state of chaos and there's so many moving parts to it that it did a good job of conveying that in the documentary, and it really kind of puts you, at least for me, in the mindset of, this is a good way to represent the chaos and like the different aspects of this country, and they're all just happening in tandem. They're all so interrelated, but it's just this crazy muddled mess. And I thought, what a great way to edit and organize the documentary to kind of give you that feel of the actual area.
Yeah, I agree. And one good thing about it too, I think the documentary as a whole is like a lot of times when you see like company or countries that are like constantly in turmoil and there's rebel groups and we hear about it on the news and everything, but I always want to be just like, gosh, why don't they get their act together, kind of a thing. Not quite that dickish, but and this was a good like representation, I think, of how that turmoil can kind of start and brew and grow. So interesting.
Yeah, yeah. It was also interesting too. I wish they would have had like one more character, which would have been like somebody from the government there. Because I mean, technically they do in one of their little undercover stings. They're like, this is the minister of whatever. But I mean, when they drove to his place, and it looked like it's probably his personal residence, not like his government office, which actually they drove there to get a bribe. But it's like a hair above a stick hut. I mean, it did have like some kind of like structured walls, but it was all dirt there, and like, it certainly seemed very, third worldish, and I was like, wow, that they're talking about taking bribes and corruption in the government, but it seemed like the government was a pretty loose structure to begin with. That there's not much to it. It's just some couple dudes that have somehow gotten titles, and
Yeah.
there's no oversights committees. There's no political system like we have in the United States. It's just a couple guys trying to run a country that may or may not have the ability to do so.
Yep. I definitely felt for the director of the park too when he was like he had a pretty rough job. Like I always felt bad for him in the scenes. There's a few different scenes where he'd be like gathering the Rangers together to like give them the rundown on what was up, and he was like, "All right, guys, here's the situation now. Huge army, headed our way, or whatever." Like, oh man, he must have just been like pacing in his office before that, being like, "All right, how could I present this? What is the best way to say this?" My question about that dude is, what was And I saw other guys with this too. What was up with the like pillow thing they had on
Oh, yeah,
on the other ship guy?
that's because he had a basically like a bag that he would carry with him of supplies, and he throws it over his shoulder right on that like little cushion, so it
Oh,
doesn't dig into his shoulder. That's what
nice.
that's all about.
I was not
Yeah,
expecting you to have an answer for that. Well played.
so there you
Good job.
go. So yeah, but you know what movie character, fictional, that the guy that Belgium guy that ran the place reminded me of?
No.
Rorschach from yeah, only because he was so insanely uncompromising. Like, I don't know if it was just like they didn't show the rest of that guy's life, but he was like, every time he's like, yeah, this is where we have to make a stand. If this area falls, if they these corporate entities come in and strip this land, then it's going to do the same with every national park in Congo. So we're taking this stand. When the rebels were coming, he's like, gets all the rangers together and he's like, hey, we're going to hold this location. He said, I'm going to be the last person to leave here if everyone leaves. And like every time he's just totally uncompromising. There's no like, there's nobody can bribe him. Like even when all the other people like make reference to this guy, they're like, oh yeah, everybody wants to do this except that one dick, that Belgian dude that won't like take a bribe and be compromised. The whole time he's just like, no matter what, absolutely sticks to his beliefs. And I assume they mentioned that he's from royalty, that he has like a royal lineage, which is probably how he got that job to begin with. But so obviously he could have done something else. It wasn't like he was stuck in the Congo. He
All
could
right.
have.
All right. I hate to do this, but I gotta grab my power cord for my laptop. It's about to shut down. So hold
All
that.
right,
Entertain
I'll hold
everyone.
that thought. I will entertain everybody while you do that. So let me see. Of course, he throws me nothing to go on. But the other main character in the film was the journalist, and she was actually pretty interesting because she came from France, and she does this one little line where she's like, "The life of everyone in France is you get up, ride the subway, go to work, and come home. That's it." And so she more or less left, you know, her nice first world home to come to the Congo for more excitement. And she certainly does that. She is willing to risk everything. As Tyler alluded to the point where she actually is driving into like an active war zone to get footage. During the course of the film, she like takes it on as her personal task to stop or thwart this company Soko that's coming into in her mind definitely like rape and pillage the Congo. So she sets up all these little undercover stings and gets all this footage of people saying really with the way it is, they're just like, yeah, we got to come in here and bribe officials, we got to come in here and do it, anything that's too dirty for the company, then they just subcontract that out, which I thought was kind of funny. So that way later on, which they do if you watch till the very end of the film, there's a bunch of statements from that corporation, stuff like, oh, we would never, we condemn anyone throwing bribes to government officials, and they're saying all the things you should say if you had your legal department write up a statement. But the reality is, those are a bunch of guys in a corporate office, and when you send people out to go into a really brutal third world country to extract the natural resources, yeah, of course you're going to do things like bribe people and, make backdoor deals with, the rebel armies, which it certainly seemed that they did, which of course they denied later on, but
Right.
that was her mission was to expose all that.
Yeah, I do feel a little bad for her though, because at the one point she's like, "Man, my only fear in all this is that like it'll get published and then like nothing will happen," which is pretty much what happened. I mean, I guess they made a documentary of it and lots of people saw it, but like I don't remember seeing on the news that like a giant outcry of anger or anything or that company being shut down. So yeah,
Right, and yeah, that is kind of a bummer.
so sorry.
There's a website you can go to. Did you go to the website yet?
No, I did not. Did
I
you?
did not either. No, I did
Okay.
not.
I,
So
I,
yes, so we
I'm
made.
I'm gonna state I'm gonna it's my personal mission statement or my personal I guess policy to never go to a website at the end of a documentary from now on. It may be really bad that one Inequality for all. They're
Inequality.
like, oh, if you want to find out how to help, go to this website. Look, if you want to give me information, put it in the documentary. I'm not going to your website. That's my
Right, but
personal
well,
policy.
at least there's kind like yeah, that one was terrible because they were like they're like, what can we do to solve all these horrible problems? Go to this website to find out. So that was a total dick move. This one was more like they presented everything and at the very end they were like, if you want to help, go do this. I assume when you go to that website, it's going to say, you know what would help? Give us $50 so we can
Right.
buy supplies or do whatever they need to do, which we should probably do as good citizens of the world, but
All right,
we
fine. I'll
probably
go to the
won't.
website. Talk me into it. I'm changing my personal philosophy.
Sweet, then didn't take much.
No, I wouldn't say it was my most like dear personal philosophy. Um, here's one thing I learned. Let's talk a little bit about the animals. So one thing I learned: dead elephants attract a lot of flies.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, it's a pretty big carcass that time.
Like, I mean, I probably could have come to that conclusion, but I never like considered it before. So yeah, lots of flies on a dead elephant, and we got to see one, so that was good.
Yeah, that was pretty gross. So,
How about the gorillas though?
dude,
Did you feel connected with the gorillas? Did you learn anything about the gorillas?
yeah, you know what? One of my favorite little things in the whole documentary was when they tickled the gorilla and it laughs. It's
Yeah, that
like a
was cool.
child, and it was awesome. I was like, I've never seen a gorilla like get tickled and laugh before, but it was super cute and very endearing, and I was like, that is awesome. So yeah, you know, yeah, I certainly think the gorillas are an amazing species, and we should do whatever it takes to prevent their extinction, which is seemingly right around the corner.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, it was interesting the way that they like when there's gunfire nearby and stuff, they just go like hug their their caretaker. Yeah, there's a lot of very human type characteristics to them and stuff like that.
yeah, tons. I mean, even the way they play, the way they interact. Obviously, like ton of emotion in the animal, like you said. Like when they get scared, they go and hug someone that they trust.
Hmm.
Uh, when they were playing with them and things like that, they were all, even like the way they played was a very human kind of way where they would sometimes be like a little bit of jerks to each other, but in a fun way. It was like, oh, that's it's a
Right.
very human thing.
So the guy who was the caretaker of the gorillas. Did we find out what it? Because like at the beginning he was like, yeah, I've got two families. I've got my normal human family, and then I've got the gorilla family. And I can't remember if he said what happened to his like human family. Did he get them to safety or something towards the end when everything was going down?
No, but I really thought about that because his son was there, and I presume because he has the one little thing where he's talking with, I assume, the mother, and so his wife,
Uh,
and then his son's there doing some homework essentially. Yeah, they never mentioned like he's like because at the end, I mean, like talk about a dude that's dedicated. So this rebel army is coming into their camp where they protect and raise the gorillas or whatever, and he's like getting his weapon all ready, and he's like, yeah, I guess I'm ready to die to help protect these gorillas or whatever. And it wasn't like a theoretical. I mean, like there's like mass amounts of mortar fire and like gunfire
right.
all over the place. So I mean, like he wasn't saying it like, man, this could happen. It seemed like he was pretty certain, like, yeah, I'm gonna die, but I'm staying here and I'm keeping my ground. But the whole time he was doing that, I was thinking, like, where's this kid and his wife? They were probably on the truck that got shipped out, but
Right. Let's hope so.
maybe,
That's
yeah.
what I like to think. I'm gonna go with that.
I'm gonna go with that too.
Yeah, and that part too. That I was like, oh man, I don't know, dude. If the army comes, like I don't know if you standing up to them is gonna like save the gorillas. Anyway, the gorillas are probably gonna be dead, dude. If they want to kill them.
Right. Yeah, they didn't seem like they had a lot of humanitarian,
Right.
notions.
Interesting. All right. Well, anything else on the in your notes or anything, or that you want to say?
No, my notes got cut short. I have to say on this one that yeah. Oh, did you see everybody's like so the end of the documentary kind of goes through like the rebel, I guess, kind of overthrow of the Congolese government or whatever. They get the military to back out, and they displaced 60,000 people in that little raid.
Yeah.
60,000 people are in this, like, I mean, granted they were in a refugee camp anyway, but then they're all gone to who knows where. I was like, wow, where do 60,000 people just grab their stuff and go to? kind of blew my mind. Uh,
Yeah, that's definitely no good. It's not a good situation.
right, yeah, because I mean, beforehand, it wasn't like they were in a good situation. They're in like tents with no plumbing or sewage or
Right.
whatever. Pretty brutal. And those people all got displaced by the rebels when they came in. And then at the end, like after that's all over, which is kind of like the end of the documentary, they do make it you know the, they don't come in and wipe out all the park rangers or anything like that. But then they do make notes that that Belgium guy, I believe, is he stands up against the Soko, the company, and then he gets imprisoned for 17 days and beaten and tortured. And then the other park ranger guy, the one that's like the head park ranger that's going around doing all that was trained by the military as a youth. Then he gets shot. They said multiple times, but he survives.
All
I
right.
was like, oh man, those are some pretty harsh cliff notes at the end.
Yeah, yeah. That was not the like at the end of the movie when they say then they grew up and got married. And now that was a unhappy ending. Um, so I mean the kind of invisible thing and one of the cool things that proves it's a good documentary is I didn't think about it too much during the documentary, occasionally, but was like the cameramen and and I kept being blown away by the fact that like during this all this craziness that was going on, they were like taking the time to get like really nice camera angles and like really beautiful shots and stuff like that. I was like, man, good job. That was some good documentary filmmaking.
That was, in fact, I did put that in my notes that they do have some of the most amazingly beautiful shots that like put National Geographic to shame on shots of the park of like these huge wide angle shots of like flyover shots of the park, and then they have stuff just like a little bug on a stick, but it's just amazing. And like
Right.
these shots of the gorillas and the elephants and all the various wildlife in the park, it was pretty amazing. So that alone was cool. Sometimes they get like, for me personally, I'm like, you can cut with like the stupid shots of filler stuff and just get to the point. But this one, every time they had those stupid filler shots, they were actually amazing. I was like, oh, if I didn't think I would probably die, I would totally go to Virunga and check it out.
Right. And that's what like I kept not thinking about those camera guys and like when they were doing those end notes at the end, I was like, man, why didn't they show that part? Then I realized, oh yeah, because they did not have the cameras in there during the beatings of that Belgian guy.
Yeah,
So yeah, so good job on the documentary filmmaking guys, I say.
absolutely. Well done. Good
Yeah.
documentary.
So how many stars are you going to give this bad boy
Ooh, are we going out of 4 out of 5?
out of 5?
Man, I'm going all out. I'm gonna give it a 4.5. I really like this. It was
Nice.
yeah. Yeah, it was so I mean it was well done, and then on top of it it was so like it showed like the worst parts about humanity in so many different ways where that's where it was like heartbreaking. It's because it was just a bunch of people trying to make their country better in the end, and it's just gone wrong in so many ways. And
All right.
anyway, but it was a great documentary.
I agree. I'm going to give it 5 stars. My second 5 star along with Muscle Shoals. So there we go. We
Awesome.
both liked it.
Yeah,
What are we
sweet.
doing next week?
Next week you ask. We're doing not quite sports documentaries.
Okay.
That's my theme.
Okay.
So your choices are Generation Iron, which is arguably a sport of bodybuilding.
Sure.
And I think you've seen it before, so
I have.
okay. So I'm not going to dive too deep into what it's about. All right. The next one is All This Ma'am, which is a documentary about skateboarders, and I'll read you their little thing on it. I have not seen it. It's Raw Talent and Risk Raw Talent and Risk taking gets them to the top fast. Drugs make sure that their fall was even faster and harder. So it's
Okay.
basically about drug use inside the professional skating realm.
Good
And
deal.
then the third, not quite a sport, is Yoga is a transformational journey. And it is about, and I have also not seen this one, trying to process her grief after her mother's death. Suzanne embarks on a spiritual journey and turns to a deeper practice of yoga.
Mm, interesting. All right, I think I'm gonna go with the skateboarding one. I want to learn about skateboarding. What's it called again?
All This Mayhem.
All This Mayhem. All right, cool.
Yeah,
Well, all
on
this
Netflix.
we will check it out and come back to you next Tuesday with that. You can email us at feedback@documentaryreviewpodcast.com. And yeah, that's going to do it for us. Hopefully next time we won't have to stop the show twice. That was like our least professional episode, but hey, what can you do?
Indeed.
All right, this is PT. Keep it real. I'll talk to you next time.
This is Jonathan. We'll see you next week.